Okay, so this question has been in my pile for a while, haven't gotten to it. So somebody's saying that they've been doing the 4-point analysis, looking for the self, trying to find exactly what the I is, and that they come to some feeling of not finding it, and because of that you know that it's empty. And so they have that awareness for a few seconds, but then the mind goes to blankness. Okay? And so what are ways to strengthen the awareness so that you can maintain that stability, that the I doesn't exist inherently, and prevent the mind from becoming nothingness? Okay, so to strengthen the awareness, it's concentration. That's what you need. You know, that's why they talk about unifying serenity with insight. Okay, because otherwise you get some sense, but then the next moment it's gone. Okay, and if your mind is falling into just nothingness or blankness, then you need to actually go back to do more investigation. Okay, because the mind hasn't really figured out what emptiness is if it slips into just like nothingness. Okay, so yeah. Also, it's interesting when you're doing the analysis, okay, you get a sense, the first part is to get a sense of if the self, if the person, the I existed inherently, what would it be like? So even though it doesn't exist that way, you're imagining what it would have to be like if it did exist that way. Okay? And then you start to investigate, well, how does the I exist? Yeah? And then you start to look and say, is the I the same as any of the aggregates? Is it different from the aggregates? You know, what is the relationship between the self and the aggregates? And then when you find that you can't say that the I is inherently one with the aggregates, because it's not one and the same thing, and yet you can't say that it's inherently different from the aggregates, because whenever we say I or self, it's in relationship to some part of the body and mind. Yeah, so we know it has some relationship. So it's not inherently the same. It's not inherently different. Yeah, and then from that we can say, well, then it doesn't inherently exist. Because if it did inherently exist, it would have to be either inherently the same or inherently different. Okay? And then you try and hold your mind on that as long as you can. But you really have to investigate, is there any possible way that I can be the same as my mind or the same as my body? Because it sure feels like we are somewhere in there, doesn't it? Yeah. Because when somebody tells us something we don't like it. And there's a definite me that doesn't like it. Yeah. And I'm going to give that person a piece of my mind, and I'm going to defend myself, and they can't treat me that way, and they can't think that about me. So it sure feels like, there's an I somewhere in that body and mind. So then you say, well, if the self were in the body and mind, then it should be findable. So what are you going to identify it as? Okay, and then when you can't find something to identify it as the I, then that is a sign that the I doesn't inherently exist. Okay, so from that you draw the conclusion that the I doesn't inherently exist. And then you don't get up from your meditation and go, I've realized emptiness. Okay.